So yes, I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy. I'm telling you it's going to be worth it. So the world is changing. And the question is that, are we ready? Last 1 year, we've seen the workplace really change and turn around like nothing has ever happened before. When we look at managers and business owners or people who have teams, when we look at how are they managing this change, how are they actually managing the different generations of people that they have to manage with different needs, different age groups, even diversity. We really do see, and it doesn't matter what size of a business you're managing or the scale of the business or the locations from which you're operating, whether it's one location or multi locations. The fact is that we all have these challenges, whether or not COVID is there. We will continue to have these challenges. So think about it for a moment, and I'll give you a couple of a minute probably to think to yourself and say, how engaged is your team really? On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think your team is today? So feel free to answer in the chat box. Where do you think? Where does your team engagement stand today? And once you've decided the number, they have some chat coming up. Okay, 6 to 7, 7, all right. Okay, so what could be the possible reasons or challenges, that you are experiencing, and why is it 6 or why is it 7? Professionally 8, Ritesh says, personally 6. Okay, lack of human connection. Okay, yeah, very important. Very important, Daddy. Yes. Oh, Tushar says 3. Okay. And the reason is work from home. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these are some of the challenges when people are working from home and people are not really connected and they have other things on the horizon that they need to manage and, deal with, and including managers. So yes, those would be some of the things. So let's look at what is it. So what are the challenges that managers actually face today? These could be, like you rightly said, because people are not there, people are not connected, there's lack of oversight. You can't actually see what people are doing. And then from there comes some lack of control. Imagine that if everybody was together, and how would tracking and measuring performance, how would that be? And then if you're not there and people are working from different locations, for example, then how would that be? So that worry for productivity, the worry for churning out results, that worry for whether the person is actually on the job or not, this desire to call up and really do some kind of micromanagement to check whether the person is actually on the job or not. So from there you can see some lack of trust also emanating as one of the challenges. And then rightly, like Adi said, lack of communication. So you do have communication issues. Either somebody is available, not available, or somebody is not picking the call, or somebody is out there but you have no real-time status, like don't really know what's the real-time status of that action or that activity that you have given to the team. So these are some of the challenges that managers actually end up facing. So we're going to discuss 4 strategies today, okay? And these strategies have been very much promoted by Gallup, and I'm happy to share these with you. The first strategy is the need to individualize your approach with your each team member, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Setting clear expectations. We all know that when we want to get things done, when we want to really manage our teams well, we need to have clarity as to what is it that the person needs to do, each one of them. And then not only clarity, but also then we need to set those expectations clearly upfront, right? Building trust. How does that happen? How can you build trust with the team? And then how can you actually use talent development as a strategy to actually manage your team better, which means get them to do their best. Okay. So moving on, let's look at the first option, which is individualize. And what I mean here is that because, if you look at your hand, all the fingers, they're different sizes and different, very, very unique, very, very individualistic. So every person similarly on your team also is a unique person. And there would be some people who have a high need for connection, a high need to be, connected and communication. And then there would be those who have a high or a low need for supervision. And really, it depends upon how able they are, how experienced they are, how their expertise level, and all of those. So here is a quadrant that gives you these four kinds of individuals. Some are requiring a combination of low, high, low, low, high, high kind of a requirement. And from these four approaches, or other four types of employees, we can look at creating a communication plan and a task completion or a follow-up process, which is very specific and unique to each one of these quadrants. And now let's take a look at what this really looks like. Okay, so the communication strategy, clearly, we need communication all the time. And Adi was the first one to point out that when we are in connection, when we are in communication, this was one of the factors that came out from the Gallup report as well, that people who are, who went through a survey said that, yeah, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know what my boss wants, because we hardly connect. We hardly talk about, what his needs are. And I really, sometimes I have to guess what is it that he wants for me to do today. So, just to give you an example. So a communication strategy should ideally, for a high connect person who needs more of connection, there should be regular one-to-one, catch up on work, and also non-work related issues, because there is a need for high connection. And also, for such a person, provide and seek feedbacks on the way that actually things can improve, the relationship can improve, the work can improve. So those are the things that one would, ideally look at. And you could also use the same strategy when you're looking for anyone with high connect, whether that person requires, supervision or not. But the regular catch up is very important. For those who do not feel the need for, connection, because they are pretty sorted, in themselves, you can curate the information, you can curate the kind of communication which is more work related, and provide the direction, provide the vision as per requirement. And of course, that does not mean that you don't be in communication. You need to still be in communication, so that you're always providing and also seeking ways of improvement, and also seeking feedback, also providing feedback to those people. Okay. When it comes to task strategy, how do you get the work done? So again, for somebody who doesn't require too much of supervision, because the person is very able, the person is able to do what is required of him to do, those are the people who are already empowered. So you can empower them further to take on bigger tasks, bigger targets, because they're already, they don't need too much of supervision. They can do things on their own. But the ones who are not, those who do need higher supervision, those will require close monitoring. And those will also require expectation setting, goal setting. So look at your people and plot them on this quadrant. Put down this quadrant and say, okay, Ramesh goes here and Saloni goes here, and wherever people go, look at what their needs are, and then accordingly create your individualistic approach. So that was one way of tackling the team management. Second is all about setting clear expectations. And we do understand that unless we know for ourselves, I wanted, to give myself a target, if I wasn't clear as to what I wanted to do, then I would never end up, getting there. So similarly for our teams as well. So define the goals, define the measurables, like we all talk about SMART goals. So what are the parameters? What are the deadlines? In what time do they need to, come back to you with the result? And how often is the monitoring going to happen? So set those clear expectations, set down how the work is going to be measured, how the person is actually empowered to take it forward. And then for your own monitoring, create a deliverables dashboard, which is common to both of you. And you can actually do it on Google Sheets, because that's like real time. You know exactly how people are, where are they doing. And you could also have a separate dashboard for yourself. uh, Absolutely accountability. Imagine there is something to be done and we don't know who's going to finally do it. So it's most important that we actually pin accountability. And if there is a bubble goal, which means there are two people who are going to share, it's a common goal, then just make sure that who is the final person who actually carries the accountability. And because it's also about working with people who could be multi-location, or who could not, or who are probably not always under your scanner or under your eyes or within your proximity. Make sure that you have created a kind of a rhythm, a kind of a discipline around how often would you meet, how often would you have calls, what do you really expect them to come back? Like, do you want an evening kind of a roundup report? And when you have an email out, how soon do you want them to respond? So let those clarifications and those expectations be also set up front. Imagine if you were able to do all of this, how would your team actually now start to work, knowing very clear in the heart, in the mind, that this is what my boss wants. So that's the second thing, setting clear expectations. And this is a snapshot of how you could use a sheet to list down. You could pick up urgency, importance level, whether there is some kind of an interdependence, and your own status, like whether it's started, whether it's completed. Uh, and you could also put down if people are on certain projects, then the start date and the end date. So this is it's a nice self-made sheet that you could you know use for tracking and also setting expectations. Third strategy, building trust. And building trust happens when we don't have a lot of communication and we haven't done anything special to build that bond, right? So bond building only comes when you empathize with people and you actually are providing them opportunities, even whether it's on-site or off-site or remote, for social interaction, right? So it's not about work all the time, believe me, because if it's about work all the time, that it's a very mechanical thing. There is no loyalty, there's no bond that's really being developed. And trust is a combination. I read somewhere quite some time back, and I think all of us must have done that. It's a combination of competence, it's a combination of character, but then important is it's also a factor of consistency. So if you've said something, if you've given your word, then kindly keep those words. I was talking to somebody the other day, on an exit interview, and the person said, they should have done this, the manager should have done this, the management should have done this. And I could clearly see that the person felt let down. So anything that you do, always provide the organization context. So this is answering the question, why? Because when people do not understand why do I need to do this, but when they get that input, they see things differently. And then they also feel that, okay, now I understand. And they are thankful, they are grateful that they now have a context which is kind of a special input which they wouldn't have otherwise. And probably the manager is not felt that, yeah, I should be aware about it. And that kind of gives the person a very warm feeling. So you can help create visibility for accomplishments, for achievements. Again, giving credit to people. Again, you feel so good about it because the person starts to trust you. So these are some of the ways in which you can build trust with your teams, for them to be able to do what you want them to do, and hence leading effective teams. Again, connecting offline or offsite or online team meetings and team building exercises is also a great way to connect with your team and build trust. The last strategy for today is developing talent. Now, we all know that people come with their own unique set of strengths. So it's great that if you have identified people when they came into your organization and you gave them which is appropriate to their strengths, to their talent, then make sure that you put a round person into a round hole and not some other square peg. So just make sure that you are uh, giving people the right opportunities, and then you're actually giving them feedback as and when they are delivering or doing something, give them good and give them constructive feedback so that they know they are headed in the right direction, or if they really need to course correct, then they have the opportunity to do it in time, and not that you're giving them some feedback, like months down the line. So because it doesn't make any sense if you do that. Proactively, you can also help them identify and provide learning opportunities. And there are lots of several, programs available online, which people can do on their own time. And so that, but have this interest in people that they actually should develop, because how much you work upon yourself eventually leads to what you do in life, eventually how you perform, eventually how you deliver, and how you the results that you get. So all of these are great points for developing talent and appreciating them for their contributions. So those were the four categories, and one helpful communication tool that I believe that today we are, using, many a times. And I know we know this, but just so I just put this down, that these are some of the ways, the tools that you can use to keep in communication with your tool, with your team, whether they are, in the same office or they are somewhere out. Uh, these are ways in which you can connect with your team online to be able to maintain the connect, maintain, and not just it needs to be work related. You can use these tools to also do social meetings where people bring in their own coffee, booze, whatever, and you can have fun times also. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation today with this last slide that talks about do's and don'ts. So very easy to know that there are great things that we ought to do, but there's a set of things that we should never do. And the do's are all there in front of you. So calling up people, checking with them individually how they are managing, having predefined agenda for team calls so that you really don't waste time, and everybody is prepared, everybody comes with what is it that they are doing or dealing with, so that you can actually work together. And having a rhythm, making sure that you have a rhythm for feedback and communication just makes it all simple, because on your own calendar you know exactly what are the things that you need to actually talk about in the forthcoming social or team connect, and make sure that you bring it in there, and you invite suggestions. You actually invite the team to brainstorm and say, okay, this is an issue, this is a challenge, how do we want to go about it? So there is so when people come with their own ideas, and then you give them the ownership of executing those ideas. So it is indeed very helpful for people. Now some of the don'ts, don't assume that if a person is challenged he will manage himself. Don't let team calls become generic discussions. Plan agenda, and then make sure that it's not being dominated by one person or few members, but everybody gets a chance to speak. And don't give feedback only when things go wrong. Always give feedback when things are actually going great, and never resort to micromanagement, because no one likes someone to boss them. Okay, so thank you folks for listening in today. Um, Quickly gather your thoughts and write down what are those three things that you are going to do that is going to drive better team effectiveness now onwards. And please share them in the chat box.